Okay, so I will talk about the sustainable fashion, how Reimagine, recreate, and restore our planet. And we say that when it comes to fashion, sustainable fashion is in chic. And let's know why I'm saying that. So the overview today, the discussion is that the fashion is one of the most pollution industry and one of the most influential ones. That means that the most influential fashion trends, decade by decade, with celebrities like we can name Princess Diana, Rihanna, Coco Chanel, that's icons that who are quite literally bursting at seams with their style. So the total greenhouse gas emissions from the textile production at 1.2 billion tons annually are more than those of international flight and maritime shipping combined. The World Economic Forum shared an analysis about that and say that the fashion industry was responsible in the least 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions in 1918, more than the carbon output of the economies of France, Germany, and UK combined. Also, by some estimates, emissions in this sector is expected to rise by more 60% by 2030. This is really alarming because the industry of fashion must reduce its contribution to global warming, and the way is to being more sustainable. Without action, the industry will fail to meet the Paris Agreement target for 2030. So the fashion industry, fashion, is more than the clothing that we use as a disciplinary device, since the expert different power relation present in all areas of society. Fashion makes a difference in social, economic, and cultural societies, and it is part of the production and circulation of goods as an industry where clothing is thought, designed and imposed on the market by a conglomerate of companies. This is a big issue because clothing and production are almost always in countries more vulnerable to climate change, and developing and people are with fragile labor law. So this is happening in countries like Bangladesh, and all countries that are vulnerable and also developing. In the chain of circulation and distribution, people acquire the clothing responding in some cases to their preferences and in others to their needs. In a kind of liberating and representative attitude of their identity, who Adorno and Horkheimer call it cultural industry. This is what I say that about fashion makes economic, social, and cultural differences in society. So what is slow fashion? When we talk about slow fashion, we talk in a similar way, ethical fashion, eco-fashion, lasting fashion. So slow fashion is a term that describes a sustainable and conscious approach to fashion production and consumption. Garments are mostly made from environmentally friendly materials or even recycled types. Clothes are typically more durable and for higher quality. Attention is also paid to environmentally friendly production. Sustainable fashion or slow fashion, sometimes we use it as similar words, is a growing movement within the fashion industry as a design philosophy based on sustainability in the three dimensions: economical, environmental, and social. Sustainable fashion emerged to respond to the impact of the fashion industry. So sustainable fashion is part of the broader design trend where a product is created, considering the environmental and social impact. An economic one that it can have throughout its life cycle, including its carbon footprint. So what are the fashion industry impacts? We say that it's the second largest pollution in the planet. One of the most pollution is the second one. The highest water consumption, considering the water footprint, generate 30% of the world's wastewater. The textile is responsible for between 8% to 10% of global emissions. To realizing 500,000 tons of synthetic microfibers to the ocean every year by increase in the consumption of single-use garments. And what are these microfibers? Are made or come from polyester, polyamides, nylon, and these microfibers, then we will see that go to the ocean. Fashion impact on the environment doesn't stop once our clothes are made. It has been estimated that 1.4 million trillion microfibers are currently in the oceans. And if the fashion industry continues in its business as usual scenario, between 2015 and 2050, 32 million tons of microfibers will enter our ocean. So what's the idea? We should look for a circular fashion industry that we can reusing, recycling all materials, eliminating waste and pollution, and regenerating the environment in a circular model, not a traditional one. So the negative impact or the negative externalities produce the fashion industry in many topics. We can see that, for example, climate change, animal suffering, water pollution, habitat destruction, human rights abuses. This is have to in relation with the labor law, air pollution, and food insecurity. So what? How I started with this, because it's very interesting what's happening in between. I really love the fashion and in my life where before and after about this issue, I will tell you about what's happening. On April 24 in 1913, there was a collapse in a building in Plaza Rana in Dhaka, Bangladesh, where textile manufacturing workshops were operating. It was a catastrophe that alerted the international community about what was happening in the fashion industry, marking a before and after in the fashion industry. Certainly, it's not the only place where it's happening and continues to happen. Only that this news crosses the borders, awakening the interest of all reserve this problem. Many people manifestation about what's happening, and no one should die for fashion. This is a reality, and this is not only happening in Bangladesh, happened here in Argentina with some fabrics, and so happening all around the world. In 1915, two large agreements realized the way to where we have to go, what direction to take, and what we need to live in a more sustainable planet. First, the Sustainable Development Goals, the 2030 Agenda, and then the Paris Agreement. But when we talk about the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and fashion, we also refer to the human and labor exploitation of textile production, because sustainability must be analyzing around the three dimensions: social, economic, and environmental. So, the United Nations, in order to achieve this global agenda for sustainable development goals, also reaches sustainable fashion. The UN climate change promotes sustainable fashion through Climate Neutral Now. There is a website with this name where you can find many brands working on sustainability, and you can choose if you want to buy sustainable fashion. You can choose and look for the brands are in this website. Where organizations wishing to offset carbon emissions with investment in projects in developing countries are invited. It also calls for global climate action, Act Now, where the United Nations calls for individual action on climate change. Because there is two sides, the consumer and also the production. So we have to see the two sides. So how the Sustainable Development Goals contribute to sustainable fashion? We say that in September 2015, the United Nations General Assembly approved the 2030 Agenda, which the 193 member states subscribed, based on these three dimensions we say economic, social, and environmental. This agreement entered into force in January 1st in 1916. The state leaders accepted a set of global objectives called Sustainable Development Goals in order to eradicate poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all as part of the new Sustainable Development Agenda. These are the Sustainable Development Goals, and three are, this is my own opinion, three are closely related to sustainable fashion. The first one, Sustainable Development number 8, decent work and economic growth. Sustainable Development 12, responsible consumption and production. And Sustainable Development 13, climate action. So I will not read all these. This is the number 8 that promotes inclusive and sustainable economic growth, employment, and decent work for all. We can see what's happening, I say, in Bangladesh 2 years before that the Sustainable Development Goals were accepted. And these Sustainable Development Goals calls for a responsible consumption and production. And the number 13, climate action, to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. So as the Sustainable Development Goals help us to create sustainable fashion, also the Paris Agreement invites us to create sustainable fashion. On December 12, 2015, in order to strengthen the global response to 195 nations, they met in Paris and reached a historic agreement, the Paris Agreement, to combat climate change, promote future measures, and invest low in carbon emissions, resilient, and sustainable. Most of the people say that the Paris Agreement is only an agreement of climate change, and this is not true at all, because also promotes sustainability in all the ways, economic, social, environmental. So it's not about only climate change, it's talk about sustainability, and in all the topics that we can use the word sustainable. The Paris Agreement, the main objective is to keep the increase in the global average temperature of the planet in this century well below 2 degrees Celsius, and promote efforts so that global warming does not exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius in relation to pre-industrial levels. So in this, I say that not only is the production who have to take action, also the consumers. And we can see that many actors of international community are involved in that and can act now for sustainable fashion or create sustainable fashion. So the new way of seeing fashion, we have the movement, activists, environmental organizations, fashion designers. So this is the support from the United Nations to sustainable fashion. And what we can do, we should rethink, refuse, reduce, repurpose, reuse, recycle, respect, and have responsibility. The cooperation of international society, companies, brands, designers, and consumers is important. We will love fashion, and that's why we think in a sustainable way. The future will be sustainable, and that will be the best fashion trend. Do you agree? When it comes to fashion, sustainable fashion is the new chic. So I say that this is my own quote, that the future is sustainability. This is creativity to change what harms us, and a great opportunity to save the planet. Thank you. And this is my contact information. I have a blog of sustainable fashion, call it Fashion for Climate, and you can find me on Instagram if you want, and this is my email for any question. Thank you so much.